The royal world just imploded, and the whispers in London's gilded corridors aren't whispers anymore. They're deafening screams of betrayal, power grabs, and secrets that were supposed to remain buried forever. Picture this: a palace, centuries old, steeped in tradition, now the stage for a confrontation so explosive that even the stiff upper lips of the monarchy are trembling. Prince Edward, often dismissed as the quiet son, the invisible royal, has just detonated a bomb under Queen Camilla's ambitions, and the smoke is rising all the way to the highest corridors of Clarence House. The shocking revelation? The beloved Bagshot Park, a crown jewel of old money prestige, meticulously restored and protected for decades, was nearly hijacked by Camilla's inner circle, all under the guise of luxury investment. But Edward, armed with foresight, loyalty, and the late Queen Elizabeth II's secret legal mechanisms, turned the tables in a move that no one saw coming. It began with the dossier labeled BP 2026Z, a confidential document that exposed the staggering £80 million conspiracy masterminded by Tom Parker Bowles and his mother, Queen Camilla herself. Their audacious plan? Convert the ancient sacred woodlands of Bagshot Park into a high-end 5,000-a-night eco-resort registered in Luxembourg under the shell of Stag Crown Hospitality Limited. Luxury, exclusivity, and profit. The perfect recipe for scandal. But the crown isn't a playground, and the stables of Bagshot Park are not a spa. For 2 decades, Edward and Sophie have poured nearly $3 million of their private funds into restoring Bagshot Park. Not for fame, not for headlines, but to safeguard a family legacy. And now, every plan of Camilla's, every email sent behind closed doors, every unauthorized video of restricted royal zones has been meticulously exposed. The stakes? Monumental. Bagshot Park isn't just a house, it's a 51-acre fortress of Victorian elegance, Gothic architecture, and historical significance. Every mullioned window, every soaring chimney, every intricately carved panel tells a story of artistry and legacy. Among its treasures, the Indian Room, a wedding gift from Indian princes painstakingly assembled on site over 2 years by master craftsmen, is perhaps the crown jewel. Camilla's vision to turn this sacred space into a VIP cigar lounge for ultra-wealthy investors wasn't just reckless, it was sacrilegious. The room represents centuries of history, artistry, and royal honor. For Edward, it represents decades of devotion, a labor of love that began in 1998 and now stands as the ultimate symbol of loyalty versus ambition. As Edward's legal team presented irrefutable evidence to King Charles III, the palace trembled. Encrypted emails, unauthorized financial maneuvers, and backdated documents aimed to bypass Edward's authority over Greenheath Estate were laid bare. The Queen's foresight proved fatal to the conspirators. Inside a sealed leather envelope, a 2021 legal instrument called an anticipatory obstruction activated automatically, nullifying any commercial challenges from those outside the direct Windsor bloodline. Camilla, explosive and furious, suddenly found herself powerless, sidelined in a game she thought she controlled. The Queen's invisible hand, guiding Edward from beyond the grave, had orchestrated this masterstroke with precision. History often paints Andrew as Elizabeth's favorite, but the Windsor overhaul exposed the truth. Edward, the quiet son, was always the true heir of trust, intellect, and stewardship. It's fascinating, almost cinematic, to contrast Edward's approach with the notorious exits and scandals of his siblings. While Harry made headlines across the Atlantic and Andrew's actions repeatedly scandalized the press, Edward remained steadfast, loyal, almost invisible. But invisibility can be lethal in a palace filled with ambition, and Edward's patience paid off spectacularly. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, was no passive bystander. Her professional acumen and public relations earned the late Queen's trust and gave Edward an unassailable advantage. Together, they had access to the Queen's private archives, the silent guardians of the crown's inner sanctum. Camilla, despite her proximity, was shut out, a fact that stung bitterly as Edward moved to quarantine her ambitions and secure the legacy for his children. The confrontation wasn't abstract, it was visceral. King Charles, frail yet resolute, issued a stark ultimatum to Camilla: distance yourself from the commercial ambitions of your son and step away from Sarah Ferguson's toxic influence. The repayment of the £5 million already funneled into Stag Crown Hospitality would be secured against Camilla's private income. Any defiance would trigger exposure to the serious fraud office. For Camilla, the world she thought she controlled crumbled beneath her. Edward, calm yet resolute, stood not merely as a royal figurehead, but as the strategic guardian of the monarchy's soul. Every corner of Bagshot Park, every restored panel, every acre of the estate now belonged to the quiet architect of loyalty, Prince Edward, and the late Queen's vision was intact. The depth of Edward's foresight is staggering. Beyond the immediate crisis, he secured the financial and structural future of his children. Lady Louise and James, Earl of Wessex, inherit not just wealth but sovereignty over estates specifically preserved by the Queen's strategic planning. A secret £37 million trust, inaccessible to step relatives or in-laws, ensures that the Edinburgh line remains untouchable, a living fortress of old money against the chaos of modern commercial schemes. While the media fixates on spectacle, Edward has built a legacy impervious to scandal. The forensic audits, anticipatory legal blocks, and strategic stewardship establish a new monarchy, one where history and heritage outweigh fleeting headlines. And yet, the drama is far from over. Inside Bagshot Park, the Indian Room holds a secret even Edward had only just discovered. A hidden compartment containing a letter from Queen Elizabeth II herself, dated 2021. In delicate, deliberate handwriting, she addressed Edward not as a duke, not as a son, but as the quietest, truest heart of her family. The letter confirms everything: the trust, the responsibility, the mantle of stewardship. Keep this place whole, Edward. It is the fortress where the true Windsor spirit survives. This revelation solidifies Edward's resolve, transforming him from a working royal to the guardian of centuries of legacy. The stakes, the history, the whispered intrigues of the palace corridors, they all converge in this moment. Edward stands not merely as heir to estates, but as the embodiment of the monarchy's moral and historical compass, a force Camilla's ambition cannot touch, a figure whose quiet strength eclipses the chaos of a headline-driven world. In the gardens of Bagshot Park, as the sun sets over its manicured grounds, the symbolic reality is unmistakable. The Windsor overhaul is complete. Camilla is relegated, her commercial ambitions thwarted. The Edinburgh line stands unshakable, protected by foresight, loyalty, and the genius of strategic patience. Edward and Sophie's quiet yet unyielding governance ensures that the old money estates, the private trusts, and the historical soul of the family remain untouchable. The palace's internal battles have become an object lesson in the potency of patience, intelligence, and the lethal power of subtlety. While the world watches the spectacle of the public royals, the true power resides in Bagshot Park, a fortress, a family legacy, and a revelation of what loyalty and foresight can truly achieve. The saga, however, is only beginning. Edward has demonstrated that strategy, not scandal, shapes history. Camilla's influence, long thought formidable, has been neutralized with the precision of a chess master. The children of Edward, schooled in responsibility, legacy, and the gravity of history, stand ready to inherit not just wealth, but stewardship of a dynasty. The contrast between the flamboyance of the exiled, the scandal of the entitled, and the calm, unyielding resolve of Edward has never been starker. In the end, the quietest man in the room is often the most dangerous and the most essential for the survival of centuries-old institutions. The palace corridors are still echoing with the shockwaves of Edward's triumph. Camilla, once the queen of whispered power and clandestine schemes, has been reduced to ceremonial gestures and empty threats. Every plan she nurtured to monetize the crown's sacred estates has been exposed, dismantled, and legally neutralized. But let's not fool ourselves, this was no ordinary defeat. This was a calculated, surgical obliteration of ambition, a dismantling so precise it reads like a masterclass in royal strategy. The forensic audit of Stag Crown Hospitality revealed a tangled web of deceit, cross-continental betrayals, and audacious plans to co-opt the Edinburgh brand for profit. Investors in Santa Barbara, Dubai, and East Asia had been lined up to finance the commercialized vision, and yet Edward, the so-called invisible prince, struck before a single deal could take hold. That the quietest man in the room, armed with foresight, patience, and the late Queen's secret legal tools, had rendered the empire of ambition utterly impotent. The shocking revelations from the BP 2026Z dossier continue to rock the monarchy. Every email, every unauthorized video, every shadowy, backdated document shows that Tom Parker Bowles and Camilla's team were prepared to leverage the legacy of Bagshot Park and other estates for private gain. But Edward, guided by the Queen's anticipatory obstruction clause, had already anticipated every move. Camilla's legal team, desperate to reclaim lost ground, attempted to argue that the Queen's 2021 cauteil was manipulated, claiming Elizabeth II lacked the mental clarity to enact such protections. Their arguments fell flat against a private recording of the late Queen, her voice calm, measured, and deadly precise, confirming her intentions for Edward and Sophie to act as stewards, not profiteers, of the royal estates. Camilla, reportedly left speechless, realized too late that the palace had been one step ahead at every turn. And it's not just about legal maneuvering. The human element, the raw, emotional theater of the palace, adds a dimension even more intense. Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, has emerged as the silent general of this battle. While Camilla flailed, publicly strategically demanding influence and access, Sophie orchestrated the palace's crisis management, protecting the family's reputation and neutralizing every PR attack. Every calculated communication, every public narrative spun to deflect Camila's ambitions demonstrates a professional brilliance that the late queen recognized long ago. Elizabeth II's mentorship of Sophie was no mere courtesy. It was strategic foresight. Sophie's access to private archives, her insight into the family's most delicate matters, and her unwavering loyalty have made her the fulcrum of the monarchy's defense. In the shadows of Bagshot Park, the ultimate chess match between ambition and loyalty has been decisively won. Edward's victory is monumental not merely in stopping Camilla, but in establishing a new era of royal governance. The Windsor Protocol, now formalized, guarantees that all private estates, trusts, and high-value properties are legally tied to the direct Windsor bloodline. This bloodline lock effectively bars in-laws, step-relatives, or any commercial opportunist from exploiting the crown for personal gain. Bagshot Park, once a vulnerable relic of heritage, now stands as a fortified bastion of historical and financial sovereignty. Every stone, every intricately carved panel, every painstakingly restored room is a testament to decades of foresight and dedication. Edward and Sophie's meticulous attention to both the aesthetic and functional integrity of the estate ensures that the family legacy remains untouchable for generations. The fallout for Camilla has been swift and unforgiving. Stripped of influence, her ambitions neutralized, and her inner circle exposed, she now faces a future defined by ceremonial duties rather than power. The private estates, long threatened by Stag Crown Hospitality's commercial schemes, are now securely in Edward's stewardship. Any attempt to challenge this, any attempt to bend the rules of inheritance, authority, or financial control is now met with airtight legal barriers. The Serious Fraud Office has the full dossier, foreign investors have been warned, and the Palace Cyber Forensics team has secured every digital trace. In short, the empire Camilla and Tom envisioned has been dismantled at its foundation, leaving only the quiet strength of Edward and Sophie standing tall. Even the children of Edward, Lady Louise and James, Earl of Wessex, are now firmly protected under the Queen's foresight. Unlike cousins caught in the unpredictable whims of media spectacle or parental scandals, they inherit a legacy fortified by decades of strategic planning. Properties such as the Highland Sanctuary, Kensington freeholds, and meticulously preserved rural retreats are now legally tethered to their line. They represent not just wealth, but an unbroken chain of heritage, education, and ethical stewardship, ensuring the future of the monarchy's most private and historically significant assets. In essence, Edward's children are bulletproof heirs to a dynasty reshaped by loyalty, patience, and intelligence. As the sun sets over the manicured lawns of Bagshot Park, the message is clear. The Windsor dynasty, long plagued by internal scandals, commercial opportunism, and fractured allegiances, now has a firm center of gravity. Prince Edward and Sophie have demonstrated that true power is not in headlines, talk shows, or temporary fame. It lies in quiet resilience, foresight, and unwavering loyalty. The £80 million conspiracy has been dismantled. The old money fortress stands unbreached. Camilla's era of subtle manipulation is over. And for the first time in decades, the monarchy's most precious assets, its estates, its private trusts, and its historical legacy, are in hands worthy of protection. The Windsor overhaul, completed, marks not just a legal and financial victory, but a moral and historical one. The children of Edward, guided by example and fortified by legacy, are the heirs to a dynasty more secure than any the world has witnessed in recent memory. Bagshot Park, the Indian Room, and the estates beyond are no longer vulnerable playgrounds for commercial ambition. They are sanctuaries of continuity, loyalty, and heritage. And at the center of it all, standing calm, composed, and resolutely unshakable, is Prince Edward, the Thusan prince, the quiet strategist, and the true keeper of the Windsor flame. The monarchy has survived, the conspiracies have been thwarted, and history once again proves that patience, loyalty, and intelligence are the most dangerous and most essential forces in the palace.